everybody, Bernie Wall here from IELTS Learning Tips, and I'm bringing you another short video in my IELTS Learning Tips series. So for today's video, I'm going to be looking a little bit more at English language than IELTS specifically, and talking about how important it is to try and think straight away into English. So that you have the best opportunity of producing good language, particularly in your speaking and your writing. And why, if you translate from your own language, it's rarely going to come out well in English. So let me move on to the little slideshow that I've prepared for that. And I'll explain a little bit more about what I mean. So quite often, I think, particularly in writing, but it happens a little bit in speaking with some students, and that makes you hesitate. You get your ideas, or you get your thoughts and your evidence in your own language. And of course, that's always going to be quite sophisticated. And I know quite a lot of students who are going through this process in their own language and then trying to convert that through translation into English. Now, there are two things with that. The first thing is that translation is a very high level language skill. So those people who do translation and interpretation for a living have to study for many, many years to be able to do this effectively. So it's not something that you can just do in an ad hoc or simple way. And the second thing is, unless you have this high level ability to translate well, you're going to find that when you do it, it's not going to come out the way you hope it comes out. And therefore, for your writing and speaking, and generally when you're using English in any case, you should try and think straight into English. Okay, so we've said that. So if you can manage to do this, you will build up a much stronger use of English. You'll improve your vocabulary, and you'll improve your grammar and your sentence structure. So don't translate. It rarely works well. Okay. And when I was learning French many, many years ago at school, my French teacher gave us this advice: if you don't know it, don't use it. So that really means if you are thinking of a word in your own language and you don't know the word in English, if you're writing, it's better to choose another word or another phrase or another sentence that you can use in English, rather than go through a translation thing, because it's just going to A, slow you up, and B, the process will probably not work very well. And that helped me a lot with my French, because I then started to think more simply, perhaps initially, in French. And this may happen to you in English, that you start thinking more simply initially, but then as you do this more and more, you will start to build up a more sophisticated way of expressing your ideas. So how can you do this and get a good band in IELTS? How can you make the sophisticated ideas in your own language work in English? And that's the million-dollar question. So in the beginning, as I said just now, it won't happen. You might start out with very simple sentences, and that could be frustrating, but it doesn't matter. You can start building on that in a more mechanical way. So start looking at verbs and looking at more sophisticated verbs in your writing. Then start looking at vocabulary and finding better synonyms. But the key thing is, if you've got a good solid sentence without any mistakes, the fact that it's simple doesn't matter. You can change that. If you try to go in with a sophisticated, complicated sentence that doesn't work grammatically, it's far harder to get band 7 with that kind of language than it is with a simple sentence that you can then build on to make it better. Okay, so this is really for speaking. If you don't know a word in the speaking exam, then describe it. I remember some students who got something about flowers. They were asked to describe their national flower, and they didn't know what it was called in English. And so they panicked, but there's no need to panic. Just say, I don't know the name for this flower in English. In my language, we call it blah, blah, blah. And it is white and it is small. And you can describe it very well and still get some good language out. If you keep doing that, you'll get there in the end. So you'll be actually explaining it very well to the examiner. And in the end, you'll learn a new word, because they may not tell you the word in the exam, but if you're in a classroom, the teacher will certainly tell you. And if not, you can look it up in the dictionary, and then you've got a new word in your vocabulary. Certain things might happen. It's a bit of a process when you think in English. So you might forget words in your own language. This happened to me many, many years ago when I was living in Indonesia. Because I was using Indonesian all day long and every day, I started to forget words in my own language. And then suddenly I'd hear that word from somebody else, and it would surprise me that I'd forgotten it. But it's not really forgotten. It's just moved a little bit to the back of your memory as English comes to the front of your memory. Then you might mix up words with your own language. I found with the people that I lived with in Indonesia, and also when I was working in France, that we would substitute words in English for words in French or words in Indonesian, because they were maybe simpler or it was easier to express. And again, this is a sign that you're getting more comfortable with the second language. So it's not anything to be worried about. Obviously, you don't want to do it in the exam. And then sometimes you might not realize that you're using English. You might think you're using your own language. And this is when you reach quite a high level. I remember one story. I was traveling and reading a newspaper, and I used to take in Indonesia an English language newspaper. And as I was reading the newspaper, I could see that there were lots and lots of articles about the city where I lived, and not many articles about the capital city, Jakarta. I didn't live in Jakarta, I lived in Medan. And there were lots of articles about this smaller city, and I was quite surprised. I couldn't understand why there was so much information about my city and not about the capital city. And then halfway through the journey, I realized that by mistake, I had picked up the local Indonesian paper, which was all about Medan, all about my city. And I hadn't realized that I was reading not the English paper, but the Indonesian paper. And these small signs will help you to see how well your second language is developing. Okay. So if you want a high band, you need to have a C1 level, which is very advanced and quite sophisticated. There's only one more level above this, which is C2. So it's already a very high language. It would mean you are an advanced user. It would mean that you're quite proficient in the language, so you can manage more than adequately in the language. And it means that you're moving towards native speaker, but you're not quite at native speaker. Now, if you want to get a band 7 or a band 8, you need to be at this level. And if you are already at that level, you should have a good understanding of grammar and be able to use it well. You should also have a wide vocabulary, and you should use the language with only a few errors here and there. And you should, with that level, reach 7, 7.5, or even 8. If you want 8.5, you need to be higher. You need to be almost native speaker. But you should be able to comfortably get 7 and possibly 7.5, and maybe even 8 in certain parts of the exam. If you are not getting band 7 or 8 in a part of the IELTS, then it tells you that you're not advanced enough in that area. So perhaps your writing has not reached level C1, or perhaps your speaking has not reached level C1. And then you need to work far more on being an English thinker so that you can improve those skills. And if you want to live and work in the language, if you're moving to an English speaking country where you're going to live and work, you will need much higher than this. Okay, so how can we get there? Right, read, listen, watch as much things in English, as many things in English as you can. And not just watching television and movies, that's only part of the story. You need to read and you need to listen to radio podcasts. Not everything needs to be visual. Listen to native speakers as much as you can, and obviously speak to people. If you can speak to native speakers, that's good, but it doesn't really matter. Speak to anybody who has good language ability. An immersion experience is really good, where you go to a country and you stay there for a couple of weeks or a month and you really live the language in that country. Of course, with the pandemic, this is just not possible at the moment. And for some of you, it might be difficult to do this anyway, but you can create your own immersion. So make a decision that tomorrow, I'm only going to use English all day. I'm not going to use my own language. I'm just going to speak in English. I'm just going to read in English. I'm just going to watch things on the TV in English, and see if you can get some friends to join you and do that. And then make that a regular thing. Maybe once a month, you can have 2 days where it's an English only day. So there are lots of ways of being creative to do this. Have imaginary conversations in your head. You know, rehearse them with the examiner. Imagine you're in the speaking, and how are you going to talk to the examiner? When I was learning French, I used to talk to my dog all the time. Okay, I never got any conversation, clearly, but it was very good practice for pronunciation. It was good practice for thinking about words that I could use, and then they came much more readily into my memory. And phrases, and just getting your mouth around the language. So that's another thing you could try. And singing songs is good. You know, it's a nice, fun way to learn words, learn language, understand. So that's something that you can do as you go around the house or go around your business every day. You can sing songs to yourself, or listening to songs too, but singing is quite good, a good way of doing it. Okay. But above all, don't try and translate ideas. Think straight into English. How can I say this well in English? And at first it might be difficult, but if you keep doing it, you'll find it will become easier and easier. Okay. So it is important to start thinking in English and doing everything into English. And I hope that spurred you to try and have some English only days. If you want to find out more from me, then you can always find me on Facebook. My Facebook name is Bernadette Wall. And I also have a group, which you're very welcome to join. I usually post something every day, and I do a live video every Friday. And I also put in other tips and advice about IELTS. And of course, my website, IELTSlearningtips.com, has some free resources as well as more information about IELTS. And you'll receive emails from me about the latest videos, etc., that I'm doing. And if you want to talk to me, then you can just contact me either here or on my website or in the Facebook group. And I'm more than happy to speak to you about your IELTS. So the links for all these should be below this video, and you can find them there. Okay, so thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.